another episode. If you ever wondered how difficult it is to build raised panel doors, or also known as rail and stile doors, very easy. This video is all about that. I will show you how to do that. The doors that I'm going to build in this video looks like this. You will see it's a small door. I need this for a small project that I have in my workshop, for a small cupboard that I have. So to explain the different components, you will have your panel on the inside, you will have your stiles on the side, and top and bottom you will have your rails. So this is the different components that you need for this door. So what will you need to build a door like this? So you will need some lumber, of course, and then you will need a router bit that I'm used to cut these profiles with. So if you look on the edge, I'm not sure if it's clearly visible. You will see there's an interlocking pattern that gives you a really strong bond between your rail and your stile. Your panel will also slide in a groove. So your rails and your stiles have a groove cut into them. It's also good for picture framing. That router bit can be used for that as well. So you will have your panel on the inside. This panel is not glued in. It's just a loose panel on the inside. And you have your rail and your stiles. The reason why the panel is loose, if the door gets bigger with some humidity in the air, the wood would expand and shrink again. Normally it can cause some cracking in the wood. With this type of design, the centerpiece of the wood, there's always some movement and some space for the wood to move. So let's move a little bit to the router bit. So the router bit that I'm using is called the rail and stile router bit. It consists out of a few components. You have your nut on top that's keeping the assembly together. Then you have a washer on top of that. Then you have a profile cutter or OG cutter. I'm not sure, there's a few different names out there for them. But you have your profile cutter. You get lots of different profiles for this as well. You have a guide bearing, and you have a normal groove cutter, and then you have a shank. So this is a half-inch shank for the big routers. I've got a 2.5 horsepower Makita. So you can fit them in different configurations together as they came apart now with your groove cutter, your bearing. Normally on top of your bearing you will have a spacer, your profile, whatever profile you need on top, and then you will put your washer and your bearing. If you cut your rails, you will do it in the reverse direction. First you will add your profile, then you will add your groove cutter on top of that, then you will add your bearing, then you will add your washer, and then you will add your nut. So you get a few different brands of router bits out there. This is a ProTech router bit, really good quality router bit. It will last you a long time. You can build hundreds of doors before you need any resharpening. So you also get more expensive sets as well. You get some sets where you have your rail cutter, your stile cutter, a separate cutter, and also a cutter perhaps to do your profile on your paneling that you want to put on the inside. This is your cheapest solution, so you can use one cutter to do both your rails and your stiles, and you just play around with the configuration of the cutter. So yeah, let's start building the doors. So these doors, like I said, is built from all reclaimed wood. The center of the wood, it's poplar wood, and the outside of the wood, it's Meranti wood. It's imported from Indonesia, I think. This is reclaimed wood. This was old church benches that I've salvaged, and I could put them to good use. So I hope you guys will enjoy the process and the video with me. If you like the video, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. It will help me a lot to grow the channel, and I hope you can learn something out of this. So thanks for watching, and enjoy the video. let's quickly get to the cutting. So first of all, I'm gonna cross cut them into the correct length. So I've adjusted the stop block here on my miter stand. So that will help me to make a lot of quick repetitive cuts. One. So the short ones are cut. So now I'm going to adjust it to 320 millimeters for the longer one. I'll just move my stop. So now just want to cut all the ends straight. So from the planer I have a little bit of snipe of some of these pieces of wood. So I'm just going to trim all of the edges off and then cut the desired length at 320 millimeters. So let me show you how to do the adjustment on the router bit. Height adjustment, it's a little bit tricky, but with a few small adjustments and a few test pieces of wood, it's not impossible to get it right. So let me quickly show you. The bottom part of the bit, it's about 2.5-3 millimeters higher than my table. And this is a sample that I have cut with that bit. So what you're looking for is the bottom groove that you see there and the top edge that you see there should more or less be the same thickness. Then you know your bit is adjusted to the center of your workpiece. It doesn't have to be precise. The important thing is when you cut them is you should always keep your workpiece parallel to your fence and not move them skew. Then you will have a lot of bad tear out on the sides and your router bit can actually grab your piece of wood and throw it all over your wood shop. So the way I do it is I just take a piece of offcut. This is a piece of hard maple and I use it as a kind of a sled. So just going to do it with one hand here. So I will align it up like that and then I will push it through my router bit like that, and that will also prevent any excessive tear out the exit side of your workpiece. This wood is very soft and open grained. So normally it's prone to have a lot of tear out. It doesn't look too bad. It's always a good idea to cut a few extra pieces while you're doing raised panel doors. You might have some bad tear out on the sides. And also perhaps note these, it's always good to cut your ends first. Because if you have any tear out, when you cut your profile on the inside of your door, normally you will remove most of that tear out. So all the cutting is done. So you will see you sit with a little bit of a burr on both sides of the wood. There's some small splints, and I just take some 80 grit sandpaper. Just a very quick sand just to remove that. That's all that's needed. You see some of the pieces of Marante, the grain is very loose and it will create a lot of splints like that. Now it's time to cut the stiles, so let me quickly show you how to set up the router bit to cut the stiles. I just want to remove my, my router fence. I'll just move it out of the way. I just want to lock it, loosen the nut on top. So you see you have a washer here on top of your bearing, so this is actually a spacer. So to cut your stiles, first you put back that cutter, then that cutter directly on top. Be careful not to put the cutter the wrong way around in, because your direction of cutting is in this way. Then you have your bearing on top, washer, and the nut. Make sure not to lose your spacer. So next you need to do your fence adjustment. So your fence should always be in line with your bearing that you have. So you can take any piece of scrap wood, just rest it on top of your bearing. Move your fence up until they make contact. And just tighten your fence. After tightening, just check again. The fence can come a little bit forward. Perfect. So to get your height adjustment correct, you're going to need all that scrap wood when you cut your rails and your stiles. I'm going to eyeball it there. Let's try it like that. You take one of your rails that you have cut, and you see how they fit. That's almost perfect. You see there's a slight height difference, so I will move my router bit still a little bit up. This is almost perfect, and you have quite a nice fit. So while I was cutting, there's a little bit of an issue. You will see the wood on the left hand side, it's thicker than the ones on the right hand side. So that means while the wood is busy moving through the router bit, it's actually lifting up a little bit with all the pressure. So to sort that out, you just add a feather board. I will show you what that is. So this is what you call a feather board. So you can buy them. This is one that I've made from a piece of off-cut wood. So what you would do is you will put your workpiece in your router bit. You will put the feather board on top of your workpiece with a little bit of downward force. I just want to adjust this G-clamp. And that will hold your job nice flat to the table and prevent it from lifting up. So when you're done cutting two of the styles, it's always a good idea to just do a quick fit. Very easy to make simple door frames. Just want to measure the width. So they are supposed to be 205 millimeters. This is exactly 205. So now I can continue carrying on and cutting the rest of the styles. Now it's time to cut the same profile on the rails as well. So make sure the front that's going to face you must be down on your router table. So the small cutout must be on top. So let's start cutting these rails. So they fit quite nicely together. And what I like about this rail and styles is when you clamp them together with a little bit of pressure, this is already 90 degrees. So for the insides of the door, for the paneling, I'm going to use this piece of poplar. It's an imported poplar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bandsaw, I'm going to rip it in half, and then I'm going to cut my 6 pieces of panel out. And I'm still deciding on the profile that I want to give the panel, but I'll figure that out as I move along. So quickly, let's go to the bandsaw and rip this piece of poplar in half. So for the panel on the inside, I'm going to cut it at about a 15-degree angle on both sides to get a nice bevel. Then I'm going to cut them to length, and I'm going to do this bevel also on the table saw. So this is the shape that we achieved there on the table saw. So now we're going to cut them into length, and then we're going to cut the bevel on the sides. So I'm pleased with the shape that the panel came out. So now we need to cut the bevel 15 degrees on the top and the bottom side. It's a little bit tricky because the table saw is not supported at the bottom. So we will have to use the fence of the table saw to guide it. Let me show you how to do that safely. So you see here in the center of the blade, between the blade and the fence, there's no support. So what you will do is you will place your piece of wood like that. Take a little piece of scrap at the back, the little piece in the front. So all the panels are now cut. I've just used a sanding block to just sand the edges. Came out quite nice. So now it's time for assembly and the glue and the final sanding on the outside of the doors, on the frames of the doors. I think I can fit perhaps 3 or 4 doors at once that you can clamp at once. These doors fit together really nicely. Last door. Okay, just make sure your alignment is good, perfect. Then start applying some even pressure. You can move the clamps directly over the joints to have maximum clamping pressure. Like I said, the board's on the center. You're not gluing that at all, so that board is loose inside, and it gives the wood a little bit of gap to expand and contract with moist. Good. The doors are nice and square. Just want to add a little bit more pressure. Perfectly square. So the doors are out of the clamps. I think they came out quite nicely. We will see what the colors do when we put the Danish wall on here. I think this poplar will get a little bit darker, but overall you can see the joints came out really nice. Now all that's left to do is a little bit of fine sanding. I'm just going to use my orbital sander for that, and the doors will be ready for hanging. So all the sanding is done. Panels came out quite nicely. nice and smooth. So I'm gonna start putting the finish on. I'm gonna use this a Danish oil from Watco. I'm gonna apply it with a brush. But like I said, this Meranti wood, it's very porous, so it will drink up a lot of the Danish oil. So I will start by applying it with a brush, polish it smooth with a rag, and continue it a few times up until we have a smooth finish. So the first coat of Danish oil, I'm just going to put on with a brush. Like I said, this wood is really porous, and it will soak up a lot of oil before it will start to seal. So I'm happy with the back sides. I'll just move them a little bit forward to do the edges. So this is the end grain. It will also soak up a lot of oil. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to move now to the front side of the doors. You can also mix your own Danish oil. It's quite easy to do the mix. So you will use 1 part of polyurethane varnish. In South Africa you can use, I normally use a Nova 17, it's like a matte polyurethane varnish. And 1 part turpentine, and you can use 1 part of what's it called, boiled linseed oil. So it's 3 components, 3 equal amounts of each component, and you have your own Danish oil. It's much cheaper than buying these ones from Watco. It works just as well. Very little difference in appearance. So I got this Danish oil on a special for a very good price, so that's why I bought it. Normally, like I said, I mix my own. Look how it brings out this the color of the Meranti. You can see the wood was really light before we started with the oiling, and I think this will look beautiful when it's done. So I'm actually not finished with the cupboard where this doors must go onto. I will finish that perhaps later today or tomorrow during the day. But the important part of this video is I would have liked to show you how to build these raised panel doors. Like I said, it's real easy, it's very quick, and to get them perfectly square, it's very easy. There's some hairs coming from this brush. I'm not using the highest quality brushes on the market. So you will see also I don't put the protective cover on my workbench, so a little bit of Danish oil from time to time on my workbench is good for the workbench. There's no harm. Keep in mind that Danish oil will not give you a finish like a varnish. It will not have a very smooth or glossy surface. You will have a perfect natural feel to the wood itself, but it will offer some protection from the wood from moist. So for indoors, this is my go-to finish that I put on. Like you see, it's real easy. It's got a very natural look to it. And indoors, it will last you many years. Perhaps once a year, once in 2 years, you can just wipe it off, give it another coat of Danish oil, just to feed the wood a little bit. And that's it. Very easy to maintain. So I've let the first coat to soak in a little bit, the second coat also soaked in. The third coat, I can see there's some pulling starting now on the doors, so that means the wood is saturated on the surface. So what you need to do now is, after you leave it for about an hour or two, wipe all pulling or any excess oil that's on the wood. Just wipe it off, otherwise it will make like shiny spots on top of the wood. So I will just remove any excess Danish oil that's visible. There's not a lot, here and there's a few spots. And then I will leave this for perhaps a day, 24 hours to dry properly. If I see the wood is still rough and in a few places, I will perhaps add a second coat. Or not a second coat, but the second day I will add another coat of oil on the wood. Normally it's not necessary. The harder the wood, the less oil you need to apply. But I'm very happy how this doors came out. Total build time for this doors, I would say, estimated from start to finish, 6 doors that I built, is in the region of, let's say, between 3 and 4 hours. It's very quick to do it. So I hope you guys at home also enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something out of it. Everybody stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, and bye bye.